Hello from outside Hillsborough, where Hull City have been held to a 2-2 draw against bottom side Sheffield Wednesday. We were inside Hillsborough, but we've not been allowed to film in there, so they've kicked us out into, underneath the main stand concourse here, which wasn't very Christmassy or very hospitable, unfortunately. But anyway, let's reflect on what was a really poor Hull City performance, unfortunately, but they did show some character, some fighting spirit to at least get themselves a point, having twice been behind to a goal in the first half from Ingelsson, who was given the freedom of the half from a long ball from goalkeeper Piers Charles. He beat Charlie Hughes and then finished with some aplomb, it would be said. They treated Ingelsson, Svante Ingelsson, a bit like prime Andrea Pirlo in the first half. He bossed the game, he ran the game, he scored a really good goal, and we're not dealing with Usain Bolt here. We're dealing with a player that he's not slow, but he sort of ambled his way over in behind Charlie Hughes, and as I say, scored. And by that point, I think that was 21 minutes, they scored, Sheffield Wednesday, and it was hard to begrudge them that deserved lead, because City were really, really poor, and we've seen it so many times in first half of the season where they've been slow to get going. There have been times when they've started really well. Leicester springs to mind. Millwall, obviously, they had a rough couple of minutes and could have been a couple of goals down, but then sprung into a 2-goal lead after 13 minutes. But there was none of that today. They were just really, really off it. And we look in the build up to the game. All the talk was about attitude, about if City come here and think they've just got to turn up and they'll win the game because of Wednesday's plight, then they'll come unstuck, and that is basically what happened. They were really poor. They showed zero intent in the first few minutes. They allowed Wednesday to gain control of the game. Wednesday had all the ball. And then, as I say, the goal is a really bad goal. It's a long kick from Piers Charles, the goalkeeper, goes over the top, and Ingelsson runs through and beats Panda. Credit to City, they recovered. They had one or two moments. McBurney had a header saved, and there was a header wide. It didn't really look like scoring, if we're honest. And then the only bit of quality really in that first half from the Tigers was Matt Crooks fed Belloumi, and Belloumi, he dropped his shoulder, cut inside and fired it beyond Charles into the bottom corner near post. And City were level, and you're thinking, right, okay, they've obviously they're a better team. That much is obvious. We know that. They'll now they've had a poor start. Okay, they've recovered really well. They've got the goal. Now they'll go on and win the game. And it obviously didn't materialise like that. They started. He made a change at half time. He took off John Egan because Egan was on a yellow card. There was potentially a second yellow on Egan that the referee Stephen Martin didn't give. City then scored a really good goal right on half time. There was 1 minute of added time, but there was a stoppage in that added time, so we played on. There was a corner that came in. Liam Miller scores a goal. The referee Stephen Martin, who was absolutely garbage today for both teams, he was awful. And he blew for a foul before Liam Miller had actually put the ball in the back of the net. I mean, everybody was perplexed as to what the foul was. Apparently, I spoke to Matt Crooks, and Matt Crooks said he said that Miller was fouled, but Miller just ran in and scored. I mean, so that was bizarre. That would have put City 2-1 in front at half time, and then obviously it's a very different game second half. As it was, they actually played with a bit more control in the second half, and I thought they looked a bit more at ease with what they were trying to do. But then again, a really poor goal. Bailey Cadamarteri is given time and space to fire in. There is a hint of offside about it. The manager, Sergei Yakirovich, who I'll come to in just a minute, wasn't overly impressed. He said that there was an offside in there against Famewo, or on Famewo, but given the standard of officiating, it was never going to be given against them. By that point, McBurney had gone through one-on-one, was hauled down inside the penalty area. That would have been a penalty and a sending off, not given. I mean, if I'm honest, and it's not, some will say it's sour grapes, and it isn't, because he was awful for both teams. But he booked, I forget who it was. He booked a City player for a foul earlier in the half, and then later in the second half. Like in the closing stages, City are chasing the third goal. Obviously, this is 2-2 by this point, and Harry Amas, the lad on loan from Man United, completely cleans out Akintola, who's come on for Mo Belloumi, completely cleans him out and doesn't even give him a yellow card. Now, I'm not saying it was a yellow card, but based on his consistency or his threshold through the game, it was a yellow card. He was just rubbish, and so often Stephen Martin I remember a game in the COVID season when City won promotion away at Barnsley behind closed doors, and Grant McCann was absolutely furious at Stephen Martin. And I've always kind of watched him closely since then, and he rarely does he impress me with the way with the way he officiates. And as I say, this isn't a slight on this isn't because City haven't won the game it's sour grapes, because as I say, Egan could have gone, he could have sent Egan off. I just thought he was fussy, and so many the best referees are the referees that you never notice, because they just get on, they let the game flow. There was a moment, again, another moment, second half, where Giles has gone to take the corner, and as Gilo runs to take the corner, and he kicks the ball in, he then blows his whistle, right? Well, he was blowing the whistle to signal take the corner, but obviously everybody stopped, and then Wednesday cleared the corner. All the City players stopped. Wednesday cleared the corner and tried to break, and he realised what had happened, and he gave them the retake of the corner. But again, you don't need to blow. It's a corner. You don't need to. It's just. I just thought he was over officious, and he spoiled. It wasn't a dirty game. There was a few niggly fouls. It's a Yorkshire derby. You'd expect it to be a bit feisty, but I just thought he was too fussy. Clearly had a new whistle for Christmas yesterday and wanting to get it used, and clearly had a new pack of cards that he wanted to get use out of as well. It was just disappointing. But anyway, so City 2-1 down. Bailey Kadamartri scores from what Jakirovic said was an own goal, and then within 5 minutes City respond. Matt Crooks with a really well taken finish at the near post. It's 2-2. Wednesday had one or two other moments without really looking like scoring thereafter, and they obviously, the Tigers, Destan came on, Carl Joseph came on to try and find the winner, but there was one or two nearly moments. Joseph's snatch shot at the near post where he slammed it into the side netting was probably the best. They didn't really. It's hard to stand here and say, look, they were battering the door down in the final 10 minutes against a Wednesday team, let's be honest, that are in all kinds of trouble. They're going down. Lots more injuries this afternoon, and couple of kids making their debut, and you have to give them credit. And this, as we said before, this was never going to be the walk in the park that some thought it was going to be. This is a Yorkshire derby. It's Boxing Day. There's a big home crowd. They've not won at home yet. They're on the back of a creditable performance, albeit in defeat at Ipswich, and they were never going to roll over and let City score 3 or 4. It needed the Tigers to come out like a bull in the china shop and get an early goal. And then if they get the early goal, that makes the game an awful lot easier for them. Suddenly Wednesday have got to come out. The crowd are quiet, although they were at times today anyway. But I thought in the first half, they just never, the press wasn't right. Midfield never got close to them. They allowed Barry Bannon again to pick passes. As I said, Elvis, the number 8 who scored the goal, Ingolson, they just let him boss the game, and they just didn't get close enough to him. And once you give teams, however poor the team might be, and obviously Wednesday have got their struggles well documented, but if you give them any encouragement in the Championship, they'll take advantage of it. The plus side for the Tigers is this is a sticky game, but they've got out of it with a point, and you just never know come May how vital this point. You don't draw many games. I think it's only the 5th draw of the season. We don't tend to win many on Boxing Day either. So you chuck those things into the mix, and you go, actually, look, if they go and win at Middlesbrough on Monday night, you probably look back on this and go, it's not a bad point. If they get beat at Middlesbrough, you go, this is a terrible point. So all is not lost. I think everybody will feel frustrated. I think everybody will feel like it's 2 points dropped. But having been behind twice, to come away from home in the Championship and get a point, sometimes you've got to take your medicine. You can't play. They've played poorly, probably pound for pound as poorly as they've played all season. Yes, I know there have been games where they've played worse and got. Sorry, there's been games like Middlesbrough the first half, they got tonked 4-1, but they were playing a very good side. Given the context of this, I think this is probably the poorest first half I've seen from them. And that will be the frustrating. I think as they trek back along the motorway back to East Yorkshire, I think there will be an element of, we passed up a really good opportunity here against a Wednesday team at the bottom of the league, all kinds of injuries, can't sign any players. If we'd have come out and taken an iron grip of that game in the first 15-20 minutes and assumed control, we'd have gone on and won the game. But they didn't. They have to take it on the chin. It's a point. As I said, I always say a point away from home in the Championship is never a bad point. It just looks a lot worse because of the opposition and the quality of the opposition, and everybody else is beating them pretty much this season. So at least it's not a home win, which would have been wholly embarrassing, wouldn't it, to come here and be the first victims of them winning at home for the first time this season. Right, we'll take some questions very quickly. Kevin didn't deserve any more than they got. Poor lackadaisical performance. Yeah, the manager was really honest, and you know what you're going to get from Sergei nowadays. You know, he said we played like he's satisfied with the point. They only played at 20% of their potential. He felt his team played like it was Christmas Day, but he's pleased with the fighting spirit. And that's the thing. Look, sometimes in a 46-game season, there are many times where you're not at it, and nobody knows why. And I know people will say, well, you give them Christmas Day off. We gave the players a Christmas Day off last year and lost at Preston. They always get Christmas Day off, and they turn in a rubbish performance. I don't think there's any one specific reason today. I just don't think I think as a collective they weren't very good, and they just didn't play well enough. And perhaps there was the humans, and perhaps that human subconsciousness that they turned up thinking they wouldn't have actively wanted to think, well, it's Wednesday, we should just turn up and win. But sometimes that the mind plays can do funny things. So look, I think they didn't deserve to win the game. I think you take the point and move on. Right, lots of questions. Andy on Belloumi, any news? He came off complaining of what felt like cramp, and he could walk without any pain, so that's a positive. He is going to be going to have an MRI scan. They're trying to get him an MRI scan tonight, which we'll have to wait and see how that plays out. Obviously, the concern is that it's a flare-up of his hamstring that we saw against Southampton. So it's a nervous wait over the next couple of days, I would say. Adam, yeah, just answering Belloumi now. I would suspect that they'll be waiting on the MRI. If they can get him an MRI scan as quickly as possible tonight, then they'll assess him over the next 40 hours. But I would be surprised at this stage if he's involved at the Riverside Stadium on Monday night. But we'll see what happens over the next couple of days, and any news that we can bring to you, of course we will. But as I say, no real word on him yet, but he's having an MRI scan. He felt like it was. He didn't say it was his hamstring, although that's what we think it could be. He was complaining of tightness, and moreover, he was complaining of cramp in his right leg. But as I say, MRI scan booked, hopefully, and we'll see. They could ill afford to lose him at a time when they've already got Joe Gowhart, and it feels like we're cursed that we're never going to ever see all these players on the same pitch at the same time. So that's Mohamed Belloumi covered. Phil, it felt like a defeat. However, that has to be the worst refereeing performance I've seen for a long time. McBurney threw and pulled back, and not even a free kick. Yeah, I've covered Stephen Martin's performance. I thought he was absolute rubbish. How that's not a red card and a foul on McBurney, I've got no idea. But nobody wants. Very few people want VAR in the Championship. Moments like that, you wish that VAR was there, but then you could counter that by saying, well, perhaps if the John Egan decision was reviewed, perhaps he gets sent off. So perhaps is it six of one and half a dozen of the other? I'm not entirely sure, but every now and then you get one of those moments where you think, I wish we had VAR in the Championship, because they potentially get the decision, and maybe Liam Miller's goal stands as well. You just never know. But yeah, I thought the referee was not very good. Adam, I've covered Belloumi already. Robert, any news on incomings and outgoings? Can we do our business? I think that they'd like to, but obviously the embargo or the fee restrictions challenges that, and obviously it'll depend on potential outgoings. If you've not seen it yet, I spoke to Adjan Nilajela on whatever night it was, the night before Christmas Eve, on the day that the club's accounts were released by Companies House, and sort of Adjan explaining that they've got to cut the wage bill, and there might have to be sales in January to try and they've got to find £3 or £4 million before July the 1st to avoid any kick up the backside because of PSR or FFP or whatever you want to call it. So that is something to watch. But what I do know is they've got replacement. If there's a big sale, they have got contingency plans in place. So we'll have to wait and see. But this window is notoriously difficult. They are going to be trying to strengthen from a position of strength, obviously being fourth in the league at this stage, but we're going to have to see how it plays out. And it might be because of where they are in the food chain, they have to wait to the back end of January to get one or two players in. We'll have to wait and see. But I think they miss Shemi Ajay. I think he makes such a difference. I know he was in the team that got pumped for by Borough. But I think generally Ajay is such a big player for them that he's a big miss. Andy, we've covered. Sorry, I've already answered that. On Belloumi, Sarah, to be fair, despite the draw, I'm happy for Sheffield Wednesday. They should be proud of that. I agree. I thought Wednesday, it's hard not. I know there's the rivalry and all the banter and all that sort of stuff. But I have a lot of sympathy for Sheffield Wednesday to a point. Nobody wants to see their club going through what they're going through. I feel for the staff behind the scenes that have had to try and put a brave face on it and keep things ticking over whilst not being paid and having all that going on. And look, you can't. They're bottom of the table. They're 30-odd points from safety. They're going to be playing in League One next year. They might even start League One with another 15-point deduction, depending on what happens with the takeover. And I thought they were tremendous today. I thought that was a performance full of pride, of character. And I think if I was a Sheffield Wednesday fan going home tonight to my Boxing Day tea, I would be proud of that performance, because they're down to the bare bones. There was a couple of lads, as I say, made their professional debuts today. They've got nobody on the bench. There was no senior player. Ethan Horvath was the goalkeeper, but there was no senior outfield player on the bench. And they've not beaten. They've got a deserved point against the team that were fourth in the table and scoring for fun. If City had come here and won 5-0 today, I don't think anybody would have batted an eyelid. But they've put in a real gritty performance in front of 28,000 people, and they should be very proud. So yeah, I agree with you, Sarah. And sometimes you have to credit the opposition. As frustrating as it is to see City not win today, and all that goes with not seeing City win a game that we expected them to do and they should have done, you have to credit sometimes. Tip your hat and credit the opposition and say, look. They made it difficult for City. They gave City problems, and fair play to them for that. Danny, do I think if we play Wednesday a few weeks later we beat them? Maybe, but then they've got a lot more injuries than they had a couple of weeks or a few weeks ago. So it depends when. Look, it's ifs and buts, isn't it? I don't think the timing is of any relevance. I think. Perhaps I might, on reflection, maybe the fact it's Boxing Day. If this was last Saturday and it's not Boxing Day, maybe. I get your point. I still think this was a game where City, had they have dealt with it professionally and from the kick-off, they would have won the game. But they didn't, and they didn't deserve to win the game. Robert, a good point for me. Danny, possibly McBurney's worst game. I'm not sure he had much to feed off, in fairness. He worked hard enough. He should have had something second half when he was dragged down for on goal. It didn't really come off for him this afternoon, but I guess that can happen in football. A couple of headers, which he might have wanted to do better, but I don't think the quality of ball in from Coyle and from Giles and from one or two others was as good as we've seen before. So, the striker's only as good as the service that we get into him, and I didn't think the service into him today was very good at all, personally. Right, let's have a look. Robert, Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. Yeah, I should have mentioned that at the top, actually. I hope everybody everybody that celebrates had a great day, Christmas Day yesterday, and enjoyed it. It goes so quick. It comes around so quickly and goes so quickly. James, I couldn't go today. Thank God I didn't. I fell asleep a few times watching that at home. Yeah, look, like I say, they've got away with it. They've got away with a point. Let's have a look. Tony, any update on Lundstrom? Should they have had Christmas Day off? Did they go into the game with the right attitude? Well, I think it's hard to begrudge players a Christmas Day off, particularly when they're, if they wouldn't have got it off had they have been away at Swansea. That is for sure, or away somewhere long haul. It's only Sheffield, so I think it was the right decision. Look, it goes one or two ways, doesn't it? If you win the game, everyone goes, fine. It becomes a talking point if you don't win the game. So I don't think it matters that much. I think psychologically it would have made a difference. In terms of Lundstrom, not a bit of a setback. He's just not quite ready yet. He's not back in training yet. I suspect he won't be involved at Middlesbrough, and that's a shame because we were looking forward to seeing him. The initial hope was he would have been on the bench here today, but that wasn't the case. They've got to be careful. We know that. So yeah, Lundstrom won't be involved at Borough on Monday evening. Danny, Sergei says he's satisfied with a point, but if we are aiming for the top six, he shouldn't he be disappointed with a point against Sheffield Wednesday? Yeah, I get what you're saying. Absolutely, and he's not satisfied with the result in terms of, you've drawn the game, but I think he's satisfied given how well they played. I think he was worried that given how well they played, or as it was, poorly they played, they could have lost the game. So I think in that context, he takes the point. As I said before, he wasn't happy with the performance. He said they were well below par. In his own words, they were 20% of what they could be. So I think in that, I get the point he's trying to make, is that, you know, given how poorly we've played, to get away from here with a point, I'm satisfied with that. But yeah, he's under no illusions that they were well below the level that they need to be. And yes, he will be disappointed, and everybody should be disappointed. I should be furious with the performance today because it was really poor. But you also have to give them a bit of credit on the flip side to say, look, you've been really poor. On another day, you could have lost today. At least they've got a point, and you just never know. You know, when the cookie crumbles back, you know, in early May, if they get in the top 6 by a point, or they finish second by a point, who knows? You might look back on today and go, actually, that's not a bad point. But you know, we're at the heart. We're halfway through the season. They've got 37 points and they're fourth in the table. I still think that's better than anybody could have imagined at the start of play. Before kick-off at Coventry, you know, early August, if you'd have said, you know, on Boxing Day, after 23 games, you'd be fourth on 37 points, I don't think anybody would have gone, yeah, that sounds reasonable. I think everybody would have expected, you know, at best upper mid-table, but to be where they are is phenomenal. And you know, a 46-game championship season has some serious setbacks, and they've had some serious setbacks already. They've had plenty of injuries, losing key players. They've not even lost fringe players that you can kind of cope with. They've lost big important players, and that affects the balance, the rhythm of the team, and all sorts of things. And they've had some, you know, difficult afternoons, and this was another one. But as I say, they've got away from here with something, rather than, I think the landscape looks very different if they get a beating today, and then suddenly they're having to then go to Middlesbrough on the back of a defeat here, and the embarrassment and all that sort of stuff that would go with it. But they haven't. They've got a point. Sometimes you've just got to accept that you've not played well enough. The opposition have been better, but you've got a point away from home, and that you just have to get on with it. Mohammed, hi, hope you had a great Christmas. What do you think? Thank you very much. It was good, yeah, lovely, thank you. Hope everybody else did as well. What do you think about Akintola? He's very poor after coming on. I'm not sure he's at the level that's needed, if I'm honest. And it's also difficult when you're taking off Belloumi and Miller, and you're bringing on Akintola, who, with respect to David Akintola, he works hard enough, but he's just not at that level. I personally would rather than bring on Joel and Darla, but I get why he brought Akintola on. So I think he's got to improve if he's going to have a future in English football at this level. Jack, worst performance of the season. It was awful. Ref was awful. So yeah, we've covered the performance, and we've covered the referee Stephen Martin, who was absolutely garbage. Yeah, Christian, another mention for the referee. Matthew, midfield was too weak. Yeah, they just never got near him in the first half. Amir's a funny one, isn't he? Because like sometimes you think he's really effective, and other times he's woefully ineffective. And I don't fall out with the manager bringing him back in today, but it didn't work, did it? So, you know, he's so inconsistent, and he's so inconsistent within games, but he's so inconsistent from game to game. 1 minute he's very good. One game he's like against Albion last week, he came on and made a difference in the second half and gave them greater presence in midfield and more balance. He was awful today for the most part. So you're like, well, actually, what do we do at Borough? Do we start him again? And I think that is the biggest problem in that City team. I think the back five at the minute picks itself, obviously, with Shemi not being there. Obviously, McBurney starts up front. We know the wingers, if they're fully fit. I think he's got a problem in the middle of the park, because nobody's really, you know, Regan's been excellent in recent weeks, but alongside Regan, I don't think anybody's pulling up any trees, are they? Whether it's, I mean, Darko, actually, to be fair, Darko came on, he did all right. He made a in added time. Wednesday we're attacking, and you're thinking he's tracking his man, he's going to give a foul away right on the edge of the box, and he just wins the ball and they get away. That was brilliant from Darko JB. But he's not, you know, Stokey wasn't great. He got hauled off at half time. So I think they've got a real problem alongside Regan in the middle of the park about who partners Regan. And the fact he keeps chopping and changing suggests that he's not happy with what he's getting from game to game. Hopefully when Lundstrom comes back, that Lundstrom can kind of nail down that slot with Regan, and they can find some continuity in there, because at the minute it's really hard for the players as well, because you've got different partnerships, and it's hard to build the partnerships when you keep changing it. But it's up to the players, conversely, it's the chicken and egg situation, isn't it? It's up to the players to grab the game by the scruff of the neck and make sure that they perform well and they keep the shirt. And if Regan and Amir have 3 or 4 really good games, they'll keep the shirts. And the trouble is, Amir doesn't do that. He's so up and down, it's inherently frustrating. Christian Miller's goal should have stood, but we were poor. Yeah, agreed. Lee, take the point and move on to Borough. Yeah, absolutely. Adam, shame about Belloumi. Well, let's hope it's not as serious as the manager thinks it is. But well, not as he thinks it is. But he's not optimistic. Was the words he used to me. Let's just another quick scan of any comments. Undala doesn't seem to be getting much game time. He's only 19. This is his first season in the Championship. He's up and down. He might get a chance if that's Belloumi done for a month or 6 weeks. But as I say, let's wait and see. If they do get him scanned tonight, let's wait and see what the prognosis is on Mo, because we really hope that that's not another massive setback for him and for City. Robert, who's likely to go? Will it be Hughes? Well, I mean, Panda and Hughes were the two in the summer that attracted the most interest. So it doesn't take a huge rocket scientist to work out that it's probably going to be Hughes again that attracts the biggest interest. And then the club have got a decision to make: do they sell him in January and take big money to keep the wolf from the door, so to speak, or do they try and keep him into the summer? And they might be a Premier League club, and then in that respect, FFP for the Championship goes away for at least a season. So that's the difficult decision that they will face, but it all comes down to teams coming in with actual money on the table, and if that doesn't happen, then there's no decision to make. If Team A come in with £12 million for Charlie Hughes and put cash on the table, then given the backdrop of the finances, the owner's got a decision to make. So let's wait and see what happens with that. Graham, another comment for Stephen Martin, the referee. Can't disagree. Absolute rubbish. Got to be better. Adam, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. Thank you very much, Adam, and same to you, my friend. Was it the game today? Thought it was an even match. Yeah, I can understand that. I thought Wednesday were the better team in the first half. City had more of it in the second half. I would say probably a draw is a fair result. Wednesday didn't create a huge amount. City were, as I say, you have to give the Tigers credit for fighting back, because it would have been easy at 1-0 or 2-1 to not find a way back into it and go and lose the game or concede a third and what have you. But at least they stuck at it, and they got the goal. The Crooks scored a really good goal, and maybe if it goes on for another 5 or 6 minutes, maybe they force a moment where they can score. But look, I think it's hard to begrudge Wednesday of a point this afternoon, given how well they played in their circumstances. James, if Hughes goes, we're not going on. I'm not sure it's that cut and dried, if I'm honest. I'd be, you wouldn't want to lose Charlie because he's phenomenal, but he's not irreplaceable. Absolutely not irreplaceable. If they get good money and it means that they stay on the right side of financial fair play and they go out and bring somebody in, obviously they can't buy anybody, but if they can get a really good loan from the Premier League, then who's to say that they can't cope? I'd be more concerned if I was losing a McBurney or a Miller or a Belloumi pending injury, or or a Gelhardt. I'd be much more concerned. Look, you don't want to lose Charlie Hughes because he's a fantastic prospect, but he's like everybody else. He makes errors. He was at fault for the first goal. That first goal should never happen. Charlie Hughes should never allow Ingelsson to get away and score from where he did. So he's not perfect. He makes a lot of mistakes, but he's young. He's learning, and he's a wonderful talent. And I would be devastated to see Charlie Hughes go. But I also understand that as a club in the Championship, without the luxury of parachute payments, and one that has overspent in the last few years and needs to cut its cloth accordingly, sometimes you've got to make difficult decisions. And I feel that replacing Charlie Hughes is an awful lot easier than replacing a Miller, Belloumi, Gelhardt or McBurney. So, might be wrong, you can agree, disagree, but that's just my opinion on that. But I don't think it's a case of we sell him and that we may as well pack up and go home for the season and call it a day, because still so much to play for. And I think with Ajay coming back, for Maywo, and as I say, if Charlie was to go, then they'll go and bring in, there is a contingency plan for players leaving should that happen. You don't want it to happen, but it's football, it's a Championship, and they're not flush with cash. They don't have parachute money. So to be a sustainable Championship club, you have to accept that you sell a player. They didn't sell anybody of real significance in the summer. Adjun turned down the money for Charlie Hughes from Coventry. If it means if they have to accept 13 million in January to keep on the right side of financial fair play, then that's what you've got to do. And I think most supporters, as frustrating as it is, would understand. And you're also paying the price for spending a lot of money on players in the past that haven't achieve. You think of there's been a lot of players that came in, and Asaruri last year, Doak and Cynic. There's so many players that have 60 odd players that have come in the last 4 years, and too many of them have come in either for big transfer fees or big salaries, big sign-on fees, and have not delivered at this football club. So the club are going to have to, have got to pay the price for that. And if that means selling somebody in January, then that's what happens. But that will only happen if the money is on the table, and we'll have to wait and see on that. And it's not cut and dried by any stretch. Adam, another comment. Panda was at fault. Yeah, I didn't think Panda. He didn't have much to do, in fairness, but I didn't think he covered himself in glory for either of the 2 goals, if I'm honest, either. But in fairness to him, he was, particularly at first, he was woefully exposed from Charlie's poor defending. Versa, can you tell if there's any truth to the Joe Gowhart transfer rumours? Well, I've said this before. At this stage, there's no case to answer because Gowhart is injured. He's not going to be back until the middle of the month. Middle of next month, January. Leeds have got a recall clause on him, but I think that's only early January, and at that point he can't play. So Joe doesn't want to go anywhere. City want to keep him. They'd like to sign him permanently. We all know that. That's nothing new. As we stand here, there's nothing to report on Joe Gowhart. Right. Just up those effing Tigers, Mark says, absolutely. Right, I'm going to call it a day here because I want to go home and have something to eat. I declined the pre-match curry because there was bones the size of dinosaur legs in it. So I'm going to, I'm running on a slice of toast up to now. So I'm going to head home and get some scran and start looking ahead to Middlesbrough. So that's it from here at Hillsborough, where Hull City have drawn 2-2 with Sheffield Wednesday. They remain 4th in the Championship, and now we've just got one more game of 2025 to come, and that is at the Riverside Stadium on Monday night. Sold out away following of just over 2,000 will be at the Riverside. Fantastic support here today in the Steel City, 3,900 here in a crowd of just under 28,000 at Hillsborough. It wasn't the victory that we all hoped, but Hull City remain 4 games unbeaten. They remain inside the top 6 going into the final game of the year. Frustrating as it is today, there's a lot to be optimistic about. City 4th in the table. I mean, if we think where we were a year ago, you have to go. As annoying as it is today, it's not all bad, and hopefully they can go to Borough on Monday night. We'll be there, of course, as we are everywhere, and hopefully bring home 3 points. Glad you had a safe journey back, Phil. Right, that's it from me at Hillsborough. Happy Christmas, everybody. If you are off to Teesside on Monday, safe journey up there. We'll have plenty more from here. Not from here, obviously, but there'll be plenty more coverage. I've got in the bag before we go to Middlesbrough Monday night, and whatever you're doing between now and Monday night, celebrating what's left of Christmas. Hope you have a great time with your families, your friends. Stay safe, everybody, and we will see you up on Teesside on Monday night. Up those effing Tigers, as Andy put it. Thank you very much for watching, everybody, and have a good evening.